All right, welcome everyone to our FUSD Governing Board Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Flagstaff Education Association and Alpha Delta Kappa. My name is Jeff Taylor and I'm the moderator this afternoon for the event. I'm a science teacher at Flagstaff High School. I'm also the high school certified representative to the FUSD Negotiations Committee for the past 4 years. I was the 2014 Coconino County Teacher of the Year, and I am an Arizona Educational Foundation Ambassador for Excellence. This forum is a great opportunity for the public in general, and FUSD employees in particular, to learn more about the qualifications, views, and goals of our 5 candidates for the 3 open positions to the FUSD Governing Board. This forum will start by taking questions written by FEA and Alpha Delta Kappa. Following these questions, we will open the forum up to audience questions. Each question will be available for each candidate to answer for a total of 1 minute. The moderator will call on each candidate in turn. You will get a warning from the timekeeper when there are 15 seconds remaining. And then you will see, you'll see an orange card when you're at 15 seconds remaining, and then you'll see a red card when it is time to wrap up your sentence. After the prepared questions by FEA and Alpha Delta Kappa, the audience members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates as well. You can ask your questions either by using the index card that you received as you walked in. You can write your questions on the index card and then hand it to one of our representatives on the side over here. If you need a new blank index card to write your question, there are blank ones as well. So just raise your hand and they'll come over and hand you that card. The volunteers will sort the cards by theme, they'll bring them up to the front, and then I'll ask the questions of the candidates. You'll again have 1 minute to respond to those questions. Audience members can direct their questions to the candidates as a whole or to individual candidates. So just write at the top, all or the specific names you would like to address those questions. If the question is not directed towards you, you will not respond to that question. In addition, if you wish to ask your question verbally, we'll have an opportunity where you can come up to the front, we'll give you a microphone, and you'll be able to ask your question verbally to the panel. Okay. As we get to these questions, if the moderator feels that one or more of the questions did not specifically address the question asked, or that their responses need further clarification, the moderator has the discretion to ask a follow-up question. Other candidates cannot offer a response to the follow-up questions that is not directed toward them. We ask that the audience be respectful toward our candidates and refrain from interrupting their responses or showing any overt signs of approval or disapproval to their answers. We ask that the candidates refrain from interrupting each other and wait until they are called on by the moderator to begin their answers. Okay, so we're about to get started. We're going to start with an opening statement where you have 2 minutes to provide your opening statement. Following the opening statements, we'll get to the moderator-directed questions. When those questions are provided, you'll have 1 minute to answer, and then after each candidate has offered their response for 1 minute, you'll have an opportunity to provide a rebuttal or elaboration on your topic for up to 30 seconds further. When that happens, you simply raise your hand and say that you would like that additional response. I will recognize you, and then you may respond. You get 1 30-second rebuttal opportunity. Because one of our candidates, Paul Kulpinski, was not able to be with us today, he sent us prepared responses to some of the questions, and so we have a stand-in for Paul. That's not Paul over there. But she'll just read his responses. Obviously, because Paul is not here, there will be no audience questions to him or response. So, all right, is there any questions by our candidates at this time? All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go down the line from right to left with our opening responses. After that, when we get to the prepared questions, we're just going to randomly pull you out of the hat. So every time it's going to be a random order of who gets to go in which order. So we'll start with the opening statement from Ms. Fredericks.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today, and thank you to FEA and Alpha Delta Kappa and Coconino High School for hosting us today. My name is Christine Fredericks. I've been here in Flagstaff almost 15 years, between 12 and 15 years so far. I have 4 grown children. I have 3 grandchildren. I am a former high school teacher myself, language arts. I taught in the classroom for 14 years. And I have a passion for education. I have a passion for a lot of things that go into education. Education to me isn't just the books, it's not just the writing, it's everything all combined. We talk about STEM a lot. I think we need to add the A and get the A in here, but that's coming. Sorry, I have been thinking about all of this stuff all day long and for days and days and days, and now I'm drawing a blank, of course. I have had the honor of serving on the board for the last 4 years. For the last 4 years, we've done some incredible work. We have recently revamped our goals and mission, and I'm very proud of some of the things that we're looking forward to in the future, and I do hope that I have the ability, or the good vote from you all to continue that good work. I miss the classroom, but this is where I think I need to be at this point. There's a hope that one day I can get back to the classroom. It really is a very passion of mine, a very big passion. I currently work in the insurance industry at this time for a multitude of reasons, but getting back on the board, being on the board has given me the opportunity to stay connected with the community, to stay connected with students, and with everything that's going on in the education industry.
Thank you, Ms. Fredericks. I'll just make one additional note before we continue on with the other candidates. You are not obligated to use the entire time. If you choose to use less of that, that is totally fine. All right, Ms. Lawrence.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here and caring about education in our community. A big thank you to the Flagstaff Education Association and Alpha Delta Kappa for hosting our debate today. Really grateful for the opportunity. My name is Dani Lawrence. I am a Flagstaff mom with 2 children in FUSD. I have a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son who attend David Gale Elementary School. My son is a special needs student. He has a visual impairment. He's learning Braille and under the direction of an IEP. About 2 years ago, we began a journey navigating through the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act and the requirements for this school district. At that time, under a different superintendent, we were not met with opening arms. And for the past 2 years, we've been participants in 4 Arizona Department of Education investigations and have discovered a lot about federal noncompliance, FUSD, and our son's right to fair and appropriate public education. So it's this complicated history that has me here today. And as I see a deeper need for parent involvement in the FUSD governing board, over the past 2 years, I've spoken at countless school board meetings. Personally, I've already devoted a lot of my time and energy to learning about FUSD, and I have some observations as an outsider that I think can be very valuable for this organization. Professionally, I work as a realtor in our community. I'm currently serving as the president of the Northern Arizona Association of Realtors with 650 members. Additionally, I serve on the executive board at Habitat for Humanity of Northern Arizona, advocating for private property rights, advocating for affordable housing, advocating for my community, and advocating for my son is something that I'm doing on a daily basis. If elected to the school board, I hope to bring these advocacy skills to FUSD in helping to secure funding from our state legislature while maintaining the important political relationships I've already formed throughout real estate and volunteerism here locally. FUSD has a huge responsibility to provide a world-class education to the children of Northern Arizona, and I hope to earn your vote and make a positive change to an organization in need of new ideas and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Ms. Kelty.
Good afternoon. I feel like a newscaster. My name is Kelty, and I too am honored and excited to be here, so thank you very much. I'm running for the FUSD School Board because I want to improve the lives of children. My commitment to education stems from the belief that all students deserve the right to succeed. I am running for the Flagstaff school board because I want all children in Flagstaff to have access to a quality education that will help open doors of opportunity. I'm running for school board because I believe our children deserve strong leaders who will stand up for their right to a quality education. As our technology advances, students will need to be prepared for a shifting economy. I'm running for Flagstaff. I'm running for the school board because Flagstaff is my home, and I want to help educate a future workforce so that good employers and good jobs will remain in Flagstaff. I have experience in education from preschool all the way through the university level. I was the Director of Success by Six at United Way of Northern Arizona, and along with Julianne Hartzell, co-founded Kinder Camp, which was a program to help families at risk have an enrichment opportunity for their children to be prepared to begin kindergarten. I was inspired to obtain my master's degree while working with non-traditional students at NAU and seeing the barriers they faced by paying for prerequisite courses that should have been accessed while they were in high school, adding on to an already large burden of student debt. I served 2 terms on the City Council, where I worked to preserve and improve quality of life for families, everything from improving access to affordable housing to protecting and improving quality of life for Flagstaff families and children by expanding programs and opportunities, by opening the Aquaplex, by serving as the advisor to the teen commission that helped identify issues for teen students in Flagstaff. I'm running for the school board because I want to apply my commitment and experience to build a strong school board and to strengthen FUSD. I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelty. And Ms. Gilmore.
Hi, I'm Carol Gilmore, and I'm running for the school board because I think it has gone from being the school board, which it is now, and I would like it to be your school board again. I want to be open to ideas that are available for both improvement and enrichment, and I want those ideas to come from parents, I want them to come from teachers, administrators, students, and the community at large. Students are getting ready to have their own career choices, and we need to help them and enable them to be ready for that big step. They also need to be encouraged to be lifelong learners. I can't see 10 years into the future, but I can tell you that students and their parents have those visions, and we need to listen to them and help them incorporate their dreams. There are financial constraints placed on education continually, and I want to be sure that every educational dollar that we have available here in Flagstaff is used wisely. I grew up here in Flagstaff, and I have been to the public schools here in Flagstaff my entire life. I think it would be an honor and a privilege to be able to be on the school board where I can help provide the foundation that the school board of our generation provided to us. I have a degree from each of the state institutions. My first degree was at the University of Arizona in education. I have a master's degree at NAU from ASU and my doctorate in curriculum and instruction from NAU. I have 29 years of teaching in the classroom. I have administrated Title I programs for a district, and I have done 100 observations 3 times for teachers strictly for teaching improvement. I am now a university supervisor.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. And finally, we'll have a statement from Mr. Kulpinski read.
Thank you for the opportunity to be recognized in my absence. I am at this moment today in Phoenix representing Flagstaff and Northern Arizona on the Arizona Advocacy Network Board, which seeks to ensure electoral justice, political rights, and civic participation of Arizona citizens. I seek to continue serving our community on the FUSD Governing Board by bringing my 12 years of experience of past collaborative leadership and governance of the district, the vast network of relationships I have cultivated not only locally but statewide, and the community trust I have forged to ensure the stability of the district during the time of transition to a permanent superintendent and the political Flagstaff Unified is currently in good condition. Because of past strategic decisions and ongoing financial oversight and stewardship, FUSD is on a solid financial standing, despite the constant political pressures that seek to defund public education in Arizona. Our students, faculty, staff, and programs are receiving statewide and national recognition for their excellence. Still, as an organization, we can do more for our students, our staff, and our community. We already have the talented staff, the infrastructure, and the resources to further elevate the educational services we provide our community. We are making progress in this effort to firmly reestablish the district as a premier educational choice for Flagstaff. This is where the continued stability of my collaborative leadership is needed to help ensure this outcome.
All right, thank you. So a couple of notes before we get started on our actual questions. Several of you went beyond the 2 minutes allotted, and so the red card came up. So as we move forward and you have 1 minute to give your answers, please stop, at least finish the sentence when you see the red card go up in the interest of time, so that we get to more of the audience questions. The second thing is that because of the prepared statements by Mr. Kulpinski, we're going to have his statements read first for every question, and then you guys will randomly be asked to provide your responses. That'll just make it a little less awkward as we're mixing it up. Okay, so here's our first question. What is an area where you think FUSD currently shines, and how can we build upon that success? And, oh, one more thing. You don't have to stand. You can stay seated while you have the microphone.
Okay. One of FUSD's greatest strengths is its diversity. Diversity of people and diversity of programs for creating a comprehensive, well-rounded educational experience for all students. This is matched by the district's value of inclusivity for everyone, to find their path to success in a safe and nurturing environment where students can learn, teachers can teach, and everyone can grow and discover the best within themselves.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think that FUSD has, from what I can tell as a parent, in my perspective, amazingly committed staff. They're administration professionals, they're teachers, transportation professionals. Everybody's got their heart in the right place. And I really do believe, truly, there's a love for kids in our school district, and that's a great foundation to build on.
Ms. Gilmore.
I feel that the most important thing that this school district has is the dedication of its teachers and its support staff. I feel that just by seeing teachers in the classroom at the various schools when I am working with student teachers, their willingness to work together and to mentor them within their community, and especially with new teachers, is phenomenal. I think there is great pride in this noble profession of teaching, and I compliment them, and I think that it's the teachers that are there every day for every learner is what makes Flagstaff the school district it is.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
Some of the areas in which FUSD shines, very definitely you can see the passion that our teachers have in the programs that they work in and work through. The honor roll that we have for the Native American students and our graduation rates, our beating state rates, our enrollment does reflect our community, which I think is very important. Some of the other parties spoke to the fact of the different cultures and everything that we have here. I think that's very important as well, and we've got such great, phenomenal programs in every school. We have things that shine, the coconuts. We've got a speech and debate team coming up. We have so many great things happening for students, and you can see the passion of the teachers coming through.
Ms. Kelty.
I too agree that there are a lot of talented professionals within FUSD. The principal here at Kulpinski High School started as a teacher here at Kulpinski High School, and I had the privilege when I was a city council member of having her students come to a city council meeting and to see how she went above and beyond. So when she became the principal at Marshall, and my students were there, I was very impressed with how she'd stand in the doorway and greet students, and she would call out their graduation years. Definitely had an impact on me. You have Miss Pastor winning national recognition, you have the robotics team, Frank Garcia, an outstanding principal, Oliver Dell, winners. I've also been impressed with the recent innovation in the way FUSD delivers education through their magnet programs. The Alpine Academy, the Mighty, AP Academy. I think there's been a lot of innovation and a different way to deliver education.
Any responses or 30-second responses? This is a pretty non-controversial question. Okay, so just remember that at the end of a question, if you do want to add anything additional, just show me your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Okay, question number 2. What is an area where you think, what will be your number one focus for improvement for FUSD if you are elected in November? And how can we, as an organization, achieve those goals? Ms. Fredericks.
Can I go first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Kulpinski.
FUSD needs to do a better job of communicating the successes that are happening every day in all of our schools in order to reinforce a sense of pride for FUSD in the eyes of the community. We are already implementing an improved communication plan to help do this, but this will be a long-term effort that will take time to shift old, outdated perceptions of what an education from Flagstaff Unified really looks like. This is one reason why the continued stability I bring to the governing board is essential for the district to continue this effort. Secondly, FUSD needs to expand its statewide and national reputation for innovation in education. While many educators in the district are already creating and implementing innovative strategies for content delivery, the district needs to deepen its cultural identity for appropriate risk-taking and employment where it is safe to fail in the pursuit of educational excellence. In the past, I have modeled shifts in the district culture toward greater collaboration, accountability, and innovation. I will continue this effort in my next term on the governing board.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
Some of the things that I feel need to be worked on, I mean, we've already made a lot of progress. Obviously, funding for the state and for our schools is going to be first and foremost in everyone's minds over the next several years. And through that, the community bonds are important, and I appreciate the fact that the community steps up and really comes forward for our students. Graduation, you know, the testing, we have an issue with the tests. We do have some low scores, and that's something that we certainly need to look at. But that is not the only measurement that we have. There are so many good things going on. It needs to be looked at more holistically as far as what the students are doing, how they're achieving, how they're succeeding. The academics, the expect more, the educators and the businesses are coming together to create opportunities for students and for staff. I guess that's it. Thank you.
That's it. Ms. Kelty.
We need to focus on teacher retention, which is clearly not an issue that is unique to Flagstaff. There's a statewide crisis. Being a teacher in the state is difficult enough, but being a teacher in Flagstaff is additionally more complicated because of the high cost of living and access to affordable housing. And I don't believe teachers should work as hard as they do and put themselves at risk of financial instability. When I was on the city council, we started the land trust to attract and retain critical personnel, such as teachers. Unfortunately, since we started it, we had a recession, and now we're starting to come out of the recession. But I think we need to be innovative. There are school districts across the country that are working private-public partnerships to establish some sort of access to affordable housing for teachers, and that's something I'd like to look at.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
I feel like the number one focus that is important is communication right now. I think the district should sort of function as like a three-legged stool, so to speak, like teachers, administrators, parents. And if any of one of those legs is not being heard or validated, it throws off the foundation of the stool. We don't balance ourselves correctly. So I think that we need more cross-interaction between parent advisory groups and organizations like the FEA and FUSD administration to create a better balance of well-informed people.
And Ms. Gilmore.
I would like to step out here and say that I think the number one improvement that we can make is to develop local funding. And how one example of how we can do that is to allow partial enrollment. Now, what that means is if there are students that are taught at home, if there are students at charter schools who do not have courses that we are offering here, they could enroll for a period or 2 periods, for instance, culinary, auto mechanics, those kinds of things, and we would receive state aid for that. I think that's something that we need to look outside the box because there are many, many constraints on funding, but we have an opportunity to be creative among ourselves and all members of the community. I would pledge to you that there should not be, on behalf of the board, any cuts made until every local revenue and source of income has been satiated.
Ms. Fredericks, a response. You have 30 seconds.
Just to let everybody know that at the last board meeting, we did in fact all agree to partially fund a study for housing. We're looking at affordable housing across the board for teachers and for other staff members and things for the district. So that's something that we are looking at. Great.
Any others? Okay, let's move on to our next question then. As a board member, what would be your key strategies to help the district attract and retain talented educators? We'll start with Mr. Kulpinski's response.
FUSD has already regained its status as the educational employer of choice in Arizona. Currently, Flagstaff Unified has no vacant core teaching positions in an environment of a statewide shortage of over 2,500 teachers. We are today recruiting and retaining the most highly qualified teachers available and achieving the governing board's goal to do so. Research also demonstrates amazing teachers are second only to a stable student household for ensuring student success. FUSD this year alone is serving over 300 students who are classified as homeless because our value for inclusivity to be of service to every student. There are socioeconomic issues in Flagstaff that are affecting household stability that are beyond the influence of the district and the governing board. However, as governing board member, I will continue to speak out on the issues of economic disparity and racial segregation that exist in our community, which undermines the overall success of all our students.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
I think first, we have to do what we can do to avoid regrettable attrition, and that's by validating your teachers' concerns and listening to them and keeping and retaining our really talented staff. Second, Mr. Sauer with FUSD made a presentation this past week in the school board meeting that I thought was a really brilliant move in the right direction about extending trying to figure out some community outreach and marketing strategies for the district to communicate outside of Flagstaff so that we can attract high-quality educators. I think that definitely Flagstaff is a beautiful community. We all love living here. It's an easy sell, right? But definitely we need to probably have a better presence in doing that to attract new people.
Ms. Gilmore.
Under attracting new teachers or teachers that are coming to our area, one of the ways you can do that is through looking at your exceptional student teachers who come through. I know that it is difficult to hire them early in the year, at the beginning and the closure of the year, but these are the people that supervisors know and the university knows are exceptional, and you should encourage them to stay in the area. Also, I think that in the past, the family dynamic of having, let's say, the husband or the wife who was working as a policeman, we now have a new educator available to be hired. Look for people that already are here that are equally qualified to take their positions, because then they will stay with you.
Ms. Fredericks. Wait, did you? Did I put this in? Ms. Lawrence answered it? And then, well, did you answer this? Yours? No. No, I didn't think so. Okay. I thought I had it over. Yeah, what are your key strategies to help the district attract and retain talented educators?
Well, building on the housing issue, we definitely need to have affordable housing, not just for teachers, for staff, for everyone who lives and works here. So that is certainly something that we need to work on. Salaries, we can only do what we are given to do. I mean, we can only work with what we have, but if I could, I'd give teachers and staff everything that we had, but we have to make sure that it's sustainable, not just for this year, not just for next year, but for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We have to look forward that far. So as far as the salaries are concerned, yes, it's important. We need to work on that. We need to be more competitive, but we also have to be sustainable because we can't just give farm away, if you will. The overrides, again, are very important, and thankfully Flagstaff always steps up for us, and they always come through for us, and I hope that they will continue to do so. Thank you.
And Ms. Kelty.
Well, we've established that salaries and access to affordable housing are key. I don't want to presume that I know what other issues are at the forefront for teachers. So the first thing I would do is ask teachers what they need to remain committed to FUSD. The second thing I would do is ensure that there's appropriate access to quality professional development. And I would also protect teachers from too many time-consuming non-academic tasks if possible. Recognizing the board does not work on that level, but when they manage a superintendent, they can definitely make that part of the superintendent's duties.
All right, thank you. Any follow-up responses? Okay, our next question will be, what kind of relationship would you hope to have with FUSD employee organizations, for instance, the Flagstaff Education Association? We'll start with Mr. Kulpinski's response.
I support fostering and maintaining a professional and collaborative relationship with all employees of the district based on a shared vision for the benefit of all children. I support any employee's desire and right to join and participate in professional associations like FEA and to collectively speak in one voice on issues pertaining to public education in our district. During my past 12 years on the governing board, I promoted the idea for teachers joining the association because only through a unified voice will educators have any influence in the dangerous political tide that education is immersed. There is currently a healthy and appropriate relationship between the association and the district, and any concerns that arise are always met in a collegial spirit. Because of this, I would love to see FBA direct more of its attention and resources to the battles at the state level, as long as this is where the real problems are today. I would welcome working arm in arm with FBA and other organizations to address legislative issues that are affecting our students and teachers here locally.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gilmore.
I have happily been a member and proud to be a member of the AEA NEA since I started teaching. When I started teaching 29 years, and I have continued as a member of the retiree organization. What I would like to do as a school board member is learn a lot more about the local association itself. What are its goals? What are its challenges? How can we encourage, or even members of the profession encourage, retired teachers who are members of this association or other associations of an educational nature? I'd like to see working with those. Those people can be your spokesman. They have the time, they have the interest, and they will support you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelty.
I would work to foster a collaborative relationship with the association. I'm a union supporter, and when I was at City Hall, we had several different employee groups. We had the police union, we had the fire union, and then the employees decided to have an employee advisory council. So I would work to ensure that there was broad representation and many voices from all district employees and an open line of communication with the school board.
Ms. Lawrence.
In 2014, I witnessed firsthand while advocating for my son's education rights the board's actions to rescind the agreement between FEA and FUSD, and honestly, I'm still a little puzzled by it. In my opinion, there absolutely has to be a relationship between these two entities. In my profession, as in many professions, there are political action committees that help protect employee values, and I see FEA as a huge proponent of that. And I understand why that intent is so important for teachers in our district. I think it's critical for the board to be able to hear from teachers and organizations that represent teachers.
And Ms. Fredericks.
Obviously, open dialogue is very important between any of the associations or any teacher groups, any staff groups. We want to be able to hear from everybody as the board. The agreement that Ms. Lawrence spoke of, we have rescinded that, and there were some legal issues involved in regards to that, and we can speak more at length after this if you so choose. If you have any other questions, I can't really speak a whole lot about it right now. We want to make sure that all voices are heard, not just FEA, but FEA is a very important part of it. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, not all the teachers, not all the staff are members of these organizations. And I would like to see those built, but that's up to those organizations to work on their membership. So of course, just keeping an open dialogue with FEA, with all the organizations, with all the staff members, with all the teachers, that is our definite goal.
And as moderator, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. So during that time in which the agreement was rescinded, there was never any public information provided about why that agreement was rescinded. Could we receive some additional information as to either why it was rescinded or why we were never informed of that decision?
Some of that information came through in executive session, and it's not something that we are allowed to talk about, as you well know, legally. We were given legal advice that certain aspects of the agreement and the agreement in general were not legal, and we were not allowed to have an agreement such as that.
And just one more follow-up. Will there ever be a time, at any time in the future, in which we will actually find out what the legal reasons were so that, there could be some kind of further discussion with the board about creating a new agreement that does fall within those legal parameters?
I don't have an answer for that, yes or no. I can't speak to that, but I would suggest perhaps that maybe we get the attorneys to come to public meetings and have discussions.
Ms. Kelty.
So when you receive legal advice in executive session, you are bound to the terms of executive session, which means you can't share the advice you've received while in executive session. But you should be able to share the rationale behind the decision. And now that the decision has been made, there should be some sort of release of documents or some sort of context so that teachers or the association can understand that.
Any other responses? Okay, thank you. Mr. Kulpinski, you are now excused. Okay, so our final question, coming from the moderator, is one that you have not received in advance. So, do we? Yes, that is true. And I am using moderator discretion to not ask it so that, in the interest of time, so that our audience has an opportunity. So, I don't know if Mr. Bourne informed you of that, but we always intended that one to be kind of a floater. So, okay, so here's your question. As most of you are aware, there are a number of states and charter school networks that have proposed that a significant proportion, up to 50% in some cases, of teacher salaries be linked to standardized test results. At the same time, there's a growing movement across the nation for parents to opt their children out of these standardized tests. What are your thoughts about the role of standardized testing in education, whether teacher salaries should be directly linked to those results, and whether parents should have the ability to opt their children out of these tests, even if that could result in the loss of federal funding or affect teacher salaries? We will start with Ms. Lawrence.
30 seconds to think here.
No, yeah.
Here we go. So, as a parent, I can only look at this issue through parents' lenses, right? And through the eyes of a parent, I see the need for standardized testing, because standardized testing tells me what's happening in my classroom when I can't be there all day to observe my teacher. So I do think standardized testing is important. I think parents opting their children out of standardized testing, I want to say, I can see as a special needs mom why I would want my standardized, my son who might not be able to fit into the box of taking that standardized test to be able to have some exception. But I also think that teacher pay does have to have some correlation with standardized testing. I don't think it's the sum total, but I do believe that it should be some figurative factor in what we compensate teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Kelty.
Standardized testing or internal benchmarks are critical to understanding student progress and achievement. I believe there should be some component, not 50%, should be at the discretion of the district, as long as expectations are clear, that there is student progress in the classroom. I attended the school board meeting where they unveiled the AZ merit scores, and I felt like there was the wrong discussion occurred. There was a discussion about whether the school district should emphasize test scores for evaluation or they should teach to the whole child. And my response is, why not do both? There should be, students should and parents should be able to see progress. And the point of the data that was presented at the meeting is for targeted intervention. When you see this widening gap, when you see students not achieving, yes, there may be problems with the test, but there are indicators, and there should be some sort of target to help that student achieve. And it should also be used as support. If a student's not achieving in third grade, then we shouldn't pass that problem on to the fourth grade teacher without additional resources.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
Every student is unique. Every student's needs is unique. And standardized testing doesn't always test what that student is or does or knows or can do. It is a component of what the overall education is, and it's an expectation that the state and the feds have landed on us. I think that there's a place for standardized testing, but I do not think that it should be linked to teacher pay, period. There are so many factors that go into educating a student, not just the hour and a half that a teacher may spend with that student or an all day for the younger grades. It's the home life, it's the friends that student has, it's everything that makes that student who he or she is. Standardized testing doesn't always test everything that they do. I started teaching when Ames came out. They wouldn't even let us look at the Ames test as teachers. It was ridiculous. So standardized testing doesn't conform, it doesn't fit every child.
Ms. Gilmore.
Yes, I do agree with standardized testing. I do not agree that it should be linked to teacher pay. Unless we are going to have a fairer way of distributing students among classrooms and among schools. If you are going to place students in a teacher's room because they are very good at discipline, for instance, therefore they get the students that may not be as high achievers, can you then some way quantify? We need to have it quantified as to how we are going to be sure that teacher pay is fair. It needs to be quantified for the superintendent as they are working on, then it's good enough to quantify for teachers.
Any additional responses? Well, I have a follow-up question to that, and we'll just go in the same order that we just went. How do you fairly determine the impacts of standardized teaching on teacher evaluations when many different teachers teach many different subjects and at many different academic levels? For instance, we have 9 teachers at Flagstaff High School teaching 9 different science subjects, from AP level to special ed. How do you compare the results to determine teacher quality for evaluation, compensation, and retention purposes?
I know. I'm trying to do that.
Well, if you're using standardized tests to determine teacher salaries or retention for retention purposes, How do you compare people who are teaching such different subject areas with different academic levels and student needs?
I think that's obviously a huge challenge, and one that, frankly, I don't know the correct answer to. I think that there are many, many ways that we need to sort of formalize. While we do have different teaching methods and teachers get there by different ways, they should still be getting to the same type of finish line, so that as parents and as the community, we can understand whether they're achieving needed results.
All right, so Ms. Kelty, you're next.
There needs to be some sort of metrics from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. That's the progress that we need to see. So it doesn't have to be, in order for fairness, it doesn't have to be state testing. It can be internal progress. There has to be something that shows measurement, both for the student, but also to inform the teacher so that they can also change how they're teaching if necessary to improve student progress. Other areas that I think teachers should be evaluated on that aren't related to testing are contributions to the school, contributions to the subject matter, relationships with fellow teachers, whether they're leading or mentoring. So there's other ways to evaluate, but most important for students and teachers, we have to make sure that there is progress. And the evaluation should be fair, and as I mentioned, they should be clear expectations for the teachers. And there also should be resources for the teachers to know how they can improve if necessary.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
I think you asked, how do you compare teachers to one another as far as their teaching skills are concerned and what the students are learning? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, if salary or retention is attached to test results, how do you fairly compare teachers to each other?
You can't. You cannot compare apples to oranges to cherries to grapes. Every teacher has a different way of teaching, but they do have that end goal. So you one of you give an idea of teaching different types of science, 9 different types of science. Well, they each have different goals, they each have different metrics, they each have different internal testing, if you will. And so each teacher has to be graded, if you will, on his or her own merits. And that's where the principal or the evaluators come in and they watch you teach, and I think that's a valuable thing.
Thank you. And Ms. Gilmore.
I know that the example you gave us was a high school level or the upper grades level. I would ask you, are not elementary teachers in a single classroom teaching that many different subjects? And therefore, we should consider that if we're going to look at differences of what levels we're teaching, then maybe that's one way we divide things differently. Again, I think it's fairness. If we have goals, we have standards, and we have very specific criteria as to how we are measuring them, then everyone can achieve at their own specific level with the group of students that they have been assigned.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to take about a 2-minute break while our volunteers collect your index cards for the audience question portion of this. So you can get up, stretch a little bit. I'll call you guys back once we get all our questions up to the front here.
was kind of interested in it. We discussed too many other things. Nice job,
All right, so if we'll have people start to file back in and find their seats, we'll get started with the audience portion. And we will make sure our last school board members back before we get started. Let's just move on. Okay, so before we get started, just to let you know, we have a number of questions that are pretty similar to each other, so I've kind of put them into little categories. If you don't feel like the question I asked that was on that topic directly addressed your concerns, then basically you'll just come up to the front and you'll have an opportunity to ask it directly to the candidates here on your own. So perhaps you can get to the heart of your question more than the one that I read off. Looks like we have about 5 categories, so it looks like we'll do 5 of these, and then we'll just open it up after that. If we don't have any objection from our candidates, I think the easiest thing to do when I read these for the all is just to kind of go down the line and we can come back down the line the other direction. Does that seem fair? Okay. All right, so here's the first question. This is to all candidates. What is your opinion of parent triggers, where parents can petition and force a school board to dissolve a public school or convert it into a privately run charter school? We'll start with Ms. Fredericks.
I don't know that I know a whole lot about this, parent triggers to turn a public school into a charter school. I would hope that something like that doesn't happen to FUSD. I have my opinions about charter schools and where they belong and how they need to operate. And I would hate to see FUSD become a charter school.
Okay, Ms. Lawrence.
I too, I guess, could use a little bit more education on this issue of parent trigger. I do think, though, through an appropriate process, which would obviously be lengthy and legal and involve public involvement, Maybe, that's a possibility that should be explored, although I'll just say it's only because I'm open-hearted to hearing from parents. If you had enough parents in a school that they rallied to try to make that a charter school, there's probably a pretty decent reason for doing it. I think at least that entity should be heard, but definitely the privatization of our public school system is not what I would want to see.
Thank you. Ms. Kelty.
I'm most familiar with Parent Triggers only because I watched that movie, the name is escaping me, about families in California in inner city schools that were failing schools year upon year upon year, and parents were desperate. And so what happens with the Parent Triggers, you take a petition around, and it's a pretty high threshold in the community. Parents who are assigned to that school have to agree, this school's failing and we want something else. I don't think it's relevant to FUSD because there's open enrollment. So if parents aren't satisfied with the school, they can go somewhere else, and there are plenty of magnet programs. So I don't foresee that happening in Flagstaff.
And Ms. Gilmore.
I think parent triggers are terrifying, and I think that we need to address the fact that there is going to become more and more privatization of schools if we do not grasp what the needs of the community are based upon the available dollars or the dollars that we can create. I think it's a catchphrase which elicits fear, and I think anytime we try to function in fear, we don't function creatively. So I would like to say by working together with the community and all of the creativity and abilities within the community, this should not be a factor that we should have to address.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything else to add? All right, we'll move on to the next question. Given the complexity of funding or lack thereof, what suggestions do you have for improving special education services in FUSD? And we'll start with Ms. Gilmore.
Again, I think that we need to be creative with our funding. And I think that we can, if we know specifically what our needs are, and we go out even into the community, we can address these issues and not have to continue to cut programs. If we're going to have special needs, some of which is mandated, then we need to know specifically what the costs are going to be. And we need to know how are we going to fund those in the best way for every single dollar that we have available.
Ms. Kelty.
Special education services are a lifeline for students, and so the most important thing is to ensure that qualified professionals are evaluating students and making sure that their needs are met. Yes, special education services can be expensive, but it is critical we make sure that those needs are met. There is a variety of sources of funding. Obviously, we missed the question on the state legislature, but continued lobbying to state and federal officials is important, but the most important part is to make sure that special ed students are having their needs met.
Ms. Lawrence?
Would you please repeat the question again?
Sure.
Thank you.
Given the complexity of funding or lack thereof, what suggestions do you have for improving special education in FUSD?
As my personal experience as a mom struggling with special education in FUSD, when I look at the overall picture of special education funding in this district and what it consumes financially, it's less than 11%. 1,700 students in this district were serviced by special education last year. That's about 17% of the special education or of the student population. Given that, I guess the issues that my family has faced with special education aren't necessarily related to the services, but more so related to the process of special education and being informed and participating as meaningful participants in the process. And so I think that special education, personally, I see a lot of great things happening in that department. Certainly when the board decided to change service providers, that really affected the quality of education my son was getting. And they did that for not any more money than the previous service provider. It was about finding the right people.
Thank you. And Ms. Fredericks.
When it comes to special education, we are in flux at this point. As many of you probably know, we are currently looking for a director. The funding that we receive, FUSD already spends more than we receive for special needs students. The problem, one of the things that we do face, another challenge, is getting people to come here who have the particular qualifications. They cannot live here, and that's something that goes back to everything else, dealing with the staff, with teachers, with funding, looking at affordable housing, and all of that stuff. We need to really circle the wagons around, and so that we can have better services, so that we can make sure that everything is consistent across the board, so that all the students have, as everybody has said, have their needs met individually and collectively.
Okay, thank you. So here's a second question that's some of you may have touched on, but we'll go ahead and ask it anyways, about special education. Nationally, special education teachers have one of the lowest retention rates of any area. Do you believe that FUSD should be paying special education teachers in particular more money? Or what plan would you have to help retain special education teachers in this district?
Again, it goes back to affordable housing, to salaries, to providing things for the students and for the staff, for the teachers that they need, so that they can do their jobs. It's difficult to retain special ed teachers because oftentimes they can go to another district and have more opportunities and make more money. Do we need to pay them more? I think probably we do. And I think generally special ed teachers, receive a little stipend, something, I'm not sure, I can't speak to that. But they have very different specialties than I did. And they are much more specialized than just me going into a classroom and teaching language arts. They have to deal with so many different things, and I applaud every special ed teacher that I've ever met, who I've ever worked with, and their heart is so big, it's incredible. And we really do need to keep those people, but it's difficult.
Ms. Lawrence.
I do, in my interactions with special education teachers, most often they're dual certified. They're double educated, right? They've invested in themselves beyond just a normal education degree. So I do believe that special education teachers should be paid more, frankly. I think as a parent who's dealing with special education, a dreamy proposal that got kicked around when my son's service provider was changed by our board was how to potentially hire those teachers and bring those people on in our own community. And I would love to, as a parent, see the development of some of those services for hearing and vision disabled students be generated with teachers who actually live here. In my son's situation, his teacher is coming from Phoenix. It's coming from a service provider that's not here locally, which is a challenge for us on snow days and other times, when we have teacher in services and stuff like that. So I think it'd be a great development for our district to move toward bringing in our own staff for that.
Ms. Kelty.
Retention is important because stability is important, but it is a challenging job. So some creative solutions might be to have teachers be able to have the option of changing their teaching duties one year to another. I do agree that they should be paid more. I think it's always helpful if you have a teacher who's invested in the school district and invest in that teacher in helping them obtain the special ed certification. It's another way to increase retention. Hiring and training paraprofessionals to provide support to special ed teachers in the classroom is also another way that you can retain special ed teachers.
All right, and Ms. Gilmore.
I agree that it would be wonderful to be able to keep teachers in their same position year after year, and I can tell you that some special ed teachers would not move out of their position. They are so dedicated to those children with those kind of needs. I think that if we're going to go on that route of paying for additional pay for someone with dual certification, we have other teachers within the district who are not dual certified but have multiple certifications. If we're going to look at paying people for dual certification, then I think we have to look at at everyone in the district who is certified in several areas and use our funds to be creative with all of those people.
All right, thank you. Ms. Fredericks, you have a response.
Interesting idea about the paraprofessionals, and I have spoken to some people who have tried to come into those special needs classrooms, and they find it very difficult, heart-wrenching sometimes. Again, it's just a matter of getting the right people, and it's difficult because of where we live, because of the economy of the area. It's very difficult, but it is something that we want. We want people from our community to be in these positions, and we want to grow these people who are here, but it's a difficult and expensive process.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Ms. Kelty.
Just in response to Ms. Gilmore's saying that there needs to be fairness for double certification, but if you have one issue and it's a very critical issue, like special ed, and you have these requirements that are not being met, then sometimes it is more important to target that problem and make sure that it is being solved than to apply a fairness. Double certification doesn't always mean double certification if it's not fulfilling a critical need in the district.
Okay, thank you. All right, this one, I have 3 versions of this question, and they are all directed just to Ms. Kelty. Due to your background working for a charter school in this community and your current position working for an organization which promotes charter schools, how would you defend yourself from accusations that being on the school board could be a conflict of interest?
Well, I actually haven't heard that accusation, but just to clarify a few things, and I didn't get to talking about my background in my 2-minute opening statement. Do I get 3 minutes because there's 3 different versions of this question?
We'll keep it to 1.
First of all, I believe I would be an asset to the school board. I have 2 children. I also didn't get to mention that. My daughter's at ASU. She had Mr. Taylor for 2 years at Flagstaff High School. She's a graduate of Flagstaff High School, and she's currently at ASU. My son attended Marshall, and then he did move to a charter school. And I ran a charter school for 4 years. I opened it and ran it for 4 years. My son is currently a senior. So I have this lens of the FUSD district, having gone all the way through, and charter school. And I've also had hands-on experience in a classroom working with a charter management. So I believe I'm an asset because I can bring to the district this variety of experience. In my current role, I work for Leadership for Educational Equity. And the reason I chose that job is because I have a long history, 20 years of working in public service with public policy to make change.
All right,
So,
sorry, your time is up.
oh, I thought I was going to
You
I
got
think it's
1 minute.
important that I defend myself, though.
Okay, well, you'll have another opportunity because we have another charter question. This one is actually for everybody, and basically it says, what will you do on the FUSD board to stop the drain of students to charter and private schools and the reduced funding that is associated with it, and what can be done to bring those students back? And we'll start with Ms. Fredericks.
I think that we are working on this as we speak. We are developing other programs and growing our programs, and we actually have had other students from the charter schools coming back to our schools. There seems to be a particular time frame in which students tend to leave and then they come back for some of the other programs. Ms. Gilmore, Dr. Gilmore spoke earlier about partial enrollment, and that's an interesting idea. I don't know if we have ever talked about that, so that might be something that we explore down the road. As far as the charters, they need to be on the same playing field as FUSD, as every other public school, and they're not. And as far as parent choices, I will always advocate for parent choices.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
I believe that some parents actually leave the district for what I talked about before, for communication, for not being part of that foundational 3-legged stool that I talked about earlier. So I think improving communication as a district across parent involvement groups, teacher involvement groups, administration, helps to bring people back. I also think as a district, we could be making some improvements in developing a new and attractive curriculum that I hear that parents are leading forward. If we had some of those things that we could offer as well, people probably wouldn't leave in the first place. So the combination of the two, I think, would probably do quite a bit to help to stop and halt the student drain that we're seeing in charter schools.
Thank you. Ms. Kelty.
I do have a lot of ideas on this and a lot of interaction with parents who did leave the district to go to a charter school and at times left the charter school to go to the district. What a common theme I heard from parents, and myself included, while there have been improvements at the junior high level with the innovation of these magnet programs I already mentioned, there is some room for improvement in terms of climate and culture at the middle school level, in terms of raising expectations. I think that's a great place to start. I also think it's great to understand what parent motivation is and why they leave. And I also think based on my experience, when I opened Basis, I realized it was a luxury to open a new school, to imprint the climate and cultures I was discussing, then to take an existing school and to change it. I think there's still some settling in after the consolidation of schools and the closure of junior highs. So again, working on climate and culture in middle schools will go a long way.
And Ms. Gilmore.
Again, I'd like to bring up the fact that yes, partial enrollment is something that we could do. I'd like to say to you, just look at the facility we have here. How many of the charter schools have that luxury? They can come for a drama class. They can come for programs that we have. We just have to have the initiative to go out and not be defensive. We have a quality system here as far as what we can offer. We just need to go and sell it to the parents and the students who want these classes before they leave and go on to higher education.
Ms. Fredericks, a response?
Just to reiterate, the funding is a major issue when it comes to the difference between charter schools and public schools. Because again, we only get so much money, and thankfully we have a community again who supports us, supports FUSD, supports our students, supports our programs. The charter schools, they have some work to do. FUSD has some work to do, but we have so many programs and we have teachers who are creating these new programs every day. They're coming up with new ideas on how to get this particular group of kids interested in X, Y, and Z.
All right, any other responses, Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Taylor, I just have a question. I thought we were only granted one extraneous response. Like for the whole debate?
No, for each question.
For each question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Sorry
I've been
that
quiet.
wasn't clear. I have a follow-up from Ms. Gilmore, and if anyone else wants to jump in after that, feel free. You were talking about partial enrollment. How would you deal with issues of transportation, busing, and so forth if students are going back and forth between charter schools and public schools or between different schools?
Right now, charter school students have to be transported by their parents. I think that we could not expect the school district to pick up transportation costs, but I think that certainly we could use with the bus system to have that available to students, not meaning our bus system, but the community's bus system. I think if people really want their students to have these classes, they will bring them. And we do not have to do anything as far as transporting charter schools now. I do not feel we should do that as public school.
Ms. Kelty.
I agree that partial enrollment from the homeschooling community could be a benefit. I actually homeschooled my daughter for kindergarten, would have loved to have brought her in for one activity or one class. But from open enrollment, I can see it as a double-edged sword if you're going from charter school to high school. When I was running Basis, we had students who would take online classes for enrichment, and the state would take our funding away. So we'd have a student for the entire year, they'd take one online course, and we would split the funding. And so I could see high school students going to charter school and losing funding.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, looks like we have two more cards here. What is your opinion of elementary schools using more technology in classes, considering how distracting and at times difficult it may be for young children? We'll start with Ms. Gilmore.
bravo for technology for elementary students. However, I think we need to be practical here in that there do not appear to be, at times, enough iPads or whatever that are working for the teacher to be able to use it effectively in the classroom. So I would like to say, let's look and see how much technology we have available, and let's see how we can redistribute those resources. I agree that at times it can be very difficult, but I also agree that my grandchildren are better at programming our computer or my iPhone than I am. So I want to have those people available to help me, so please let them learn how to do those things.
Ms. Kelty.
We have to be honest that we only have short-term studies of technology in elementary school. We don't have long-term studies. I follow the American Association of Pediatricians in terms of how much screen time early childhood 0 to 7 should be doing. I'm a big proponent of fundamentals first, learning fundamentals before you apply them to technology. I think a little bit of technology it won't induce any damage, but I worry about too much reliance on technology. And I also worry about students being required, and schools being required to provide the technology for these tests because of the expense and the commitment, and then students being used to the technology. So I think technology it's a double-edged sword. I've seen it help students who are having difficulty with literacy. I've seen them help improve that. I've also seen it diminish students' attention span, which is troubling.
Ms. Lawrence.
Unfortunately, I think that technology and education is just a reality, guys. Like, we're already here. The ship has already sailed, and our kids are needing it. My daughter, just last year in 4th grade, had to take AZ merit testing on an iPad, and with a keyboard that I had to go and purchase for her so that she could learn how to use, because her classroom teacher didn't have the keyboard and did not have the instructional time to teach my daughter keyboarding. So it's already happening. So I guess I feel like we're behind the curve. And unfortunately, technology in our world is just growing and growing and growing by leaps and bounds. And sticking our head in the sand and thinking that we don't have to purchase it for all students or make it fair for all students could be why you're seeing some of the discrepancies on AZ merit scores currently, because there are a lot of students in this district who don't have parents who can go out and buy new keyboards so they can take a standardized test.
Ms. Fredericks.
I agree. Technology is where we are. We are here, and it's not going away, and it's just going to keep compounding, and it's just going to keep coming at us. And students need to know not just how to use it, but how to manage it. And I think that's something that they, at the elementary level, that they need to really focus on, and I believe that they do. Managing and not just believing that every website is telling the truth. These students, it's a way of getting these students to have critical thinking skills that are so important to them and in their lifelong pursuit of whatever it is that they do. Technology, yes, we have to provide for every student. One of my concerns is that there are students who don't live here in town, or students whose parents cannot afford to have the internet, they cannot afford to have devices. They live out on the reservation. We do have students who live with no running water, no electricity, and we still have to make sure that they also come along with everybody else, and that they also have the technology and the skills and the expertise on how to use things.
Ms. Kelty.
I just want to take my head out of the sand for a second. I am not anti-technology. I think it's the level of proportion, and I think the teacher should be in charge of that. And I think age plays a very important part. So yes, there should be technology, but not an over-reliance of technology. And in relation to technology doesn't naturally promote critical thinking skills for students. In fact, at the high school level, you see a rise in plagiarism because students haven't been taught how to absorb all this information and then put it in their own terms. They're just cutting and pasting from a website onto papers.
Okay, well, I have a moderator discretion follow-up question on this. When AZ Merit did go to being done on the iPads, and then also with our common summative assessments that each teacher in the district has to give, one thing that many teachers have noticed is that technology has taken this huge chunk out of the school year. It absorbs all of our bandwidth. We have to reschedule our whole day, have special weeks where we can move the iPad carts around to get everybody tested. And there's a feeling among a lot of teachers that it interferes with the flow of the curriculum in our classes. Are these concerns to you, and what do you think that we as a district can do to help prevent standardized testing from interfering with curriculum? And we'll start with Ms. Fredericks.
I think that at this point, it's still new, relatively speaking, and we're still in a learning curve. We're still figuring out how to use the technology, and the technology hasn't advanced to where we need it to be in order to be really efficient for all students, for all activities that they are participating in. So it's just a matter of, we've got to work through the kinks. We have to work through, and it's difficult right now. We have to get through the time frame. We have to get through the teaching. We have to get through, and there's going to come a day that this is going to be not even a question, I believe.
Okay, Ms. Lawrence?
I see an absolute need for FUSD to actually, let's talk about providing more units, right? If we weren't moving iPads from classroom to classroom to classroom, and teachers had the iPads they needed, and we didn't have to share those materials, I think that it would certainly impact or help your curriculum as a teacher, and that downtime that you're spent transferring those things around. Now, I understand that we have funding issues, and that funding is a huge concept, and how we get around that, but I think that we don't hit our local resources enough to help our I think if we had a better marketing presence as a school district, we might see that some of this technology would be coming to us from our community partners and our industry partners in the form of grants for outside organizations to help purchase those things, or whatever. But I do think that we obviously need more units, clearly.
Ms. Kelty?
I think your question better summarized my concerns with technology, whether it aligns and reinforces the curriculum or interferes with the curriculum. For teachers experiencing that, I would suggest having some resources where it's just the technology aspect, so teachers aren't having to teach the technology aspect to the kids, but are able to teach the technology. And then also, yes, this is a new test, and we also have a lot of lobbying power that we should be pushing back on the state superintendent about being forced to incorporate technology, and lobbying to have examples where students can go back to pen and paper if there's not adequate bandwidth, or if the requirement is technology, then it should come with some funding source so that it isn't such a burden on schools.
And Ms. Gilmore?
Testing is a reality. That's not going away. But I think we need to look at the difference between the testing and assessment. Because assessment is your improvement in instruction. And I see, at least at the lower grades, that is what technology is being used for, other than at times when it's testing. I would like to say that perhaps this is what I've been trying to say is my position. I want to be open to ideas from everyone. I want to be interested in what teachers can come up with if they felt safe and they trusted that their answers might be employed. Teachers, parents, students, ask the students for ways to come up with what we only have X amount of machines or equipment. What can we do? They might come up with different scheduling ideas than any of us could do. Allow people to give us their ideas and share their ideas. That's where the wealth of the community is.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're down to our final card here. And I think this is more of a suggestion than a question, but I'll just throw it out there and let you guys respond however you wish. So the question says, can we provide affordable daycare to help retain teachers? My daughter couldn't afford to keep teaching in this district once she had a child. So I'll follow up with this as a parent who also went through this. We have the FACS program, and then we also have a relationship with the cooperative preschool, where many teachers in this district send their children to those to cover the before and after school. But we have to pay for that. And should there be something that helps teachers, for instance, some kind of discount, or the district covers the cost of that as a retention mechanism? I'll start with Ms. Gilmore.
Well, it's certainly something that could be explored, but I don't know that we could say it's the highest priority for use of funds. And believe me, I went through the same thing when I had my own child that I had to do daycare for. It's not easy. It really, really isn't. But why can't we create classes for which students can get early childhood credit and be able to somehow solve this type of problem?
Ms. Kelty.
I see it as a double investment, both to retain teachers, and then these are the students that will come to FUSD. But before committing, I of course would have to see the numbers and the costs. I did work when I was at United Way to pass First Things First, and there is money for early childhood education in First Things First, so I don't know if that's something that could be a partnership with the school district and First Things First. We spent a lot of time just talking about retention, and here's an example of something very concrete that would assist in retention. And when you look at the cost of a turnover of a teacher and the search and the training, it doesn't seem like it would be so expensive.
Ms. Lawrence.
Like Ms. Kelty, I think that, speaking off the cuff and saying, I think it's a great idea. I do think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. But it's definitely a numbers figure. It's a dollar figure. I have no idea how many teachers have children that also attend FUSD. I definitely would want to see the numbers before committing to something like that. But I can tell you that, especially when people are challenged to be able to increase wages and increase funds for teachers, increasing benefits is a great way to retain employees, hands down. So I definitely would be on board with exploring this option.
And Ms. Fredericks.
I don't know what else I can say. I agree with everybody up here. I mean, it is a wonderful idea, but again, it's you have to look at the hard numbers, and unfortunately, I know that we do have a couple of programs in the district where they have infants and young children, toddlers, but I believe it's for students. I don't think it's for the teachers, and maybe that's something that we could expand upon, but I don't know what the need is, for starters, as far as how many teachers would have that need. If they would want to have their children in the schools like that, in those kinds of programs or not. There's a lot to explore there, a lot of questions.
Okay, great. So at this stage, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask from the audience, just raise your hand and I'll call upon you, and then address it either to one or all of the candidates. Sir, please. Yeah, just stand up and shout it out.
This is a question for anyone who'd like to take it. It's a question about the continuing education of a school board member. Can any of you describe a model school district, an influential thinker, maybe what we call torchbearers, who have influenced your thinking or your philosophy?
Just school board members, or
Just you as a potential board member. Can you describe a great thinker or a model school district that's affected your thinking?
I'll start. I don't know that there's a particular person other than the teachers I had as a student when I was going through school and going through college. But just based on my experiences in the classroom, I still have contact with a lot of the students I taught, and I am so thrilled to watch their lives unfold, the marriages, the babies, and just continuing on with their own pursuits in education and everything else that they're doing. As far as education of a school board member, there's a lot of opportunities for us to get education, to talk to the legislatures, and we do. We have a very good working relationship. We have Senator Bob Thorpe and Sylvia Allen come to our schools on a regular basis. They have seen our programs. They are coming on board, and it's very important that we continue those kinds of relationships.
We don't have to go in order, but we can if you want.
All right. I'm not a Flagstaff native. I didn't grow up in this community. I grew up in Colorado, and that was pre-marijuana funding for school districts. But I grew up in a very educated school district. Poudre R1 school district. They did a great job. And as a student, as a mom watching my children now, I definitely see just a remarkable difference from state to state. You know, an influential thinker in a school district who I think about a lot, still talk to. I talked to him today before this debate, was my high school debate coach, Mr. Wanswick. Shout out, he was a great guy. And he's still a very good friend of mine. And Mr. Wanswick was such an innovative and different, strange teacher. But he created an excellent learning environment and one where we all wanted to just be with him and in a great space. So I can just tell you that, you know, education in Colorado was very good to me, and it's something I think a lot about as I'm running for a board member.
I would say, I'm going to botch her name, Marion Wright Edelman. She's been very influential in my life to fight and champion for not neglecting children in poverty and the barriers they have to overcome. Governor Janet Napolitano, I worked with her on First Things First. In a state that doesn't value education, we managed to pull together a coalition and find a permanent revenue source for early childhood education, which is constantly under attack, by the way, from the state legislature, but we have it's remained intact, and we need to continue to fight that. I'm a big podcast fan, and so if you listen to This American Life, they just reran their show on segregation, desegregation. I grew up in Massachusetts, where students were bused in from schools from Boston. It's very eye-opening talking about the segregation that still exists in our country today. I'm not talking about Flagstaff exclusively. Yeah, so a number of podcasts that if anyone's interested, I can share Madness Stuff 20 with you.
I would say that Flagstaff is uniquely what we would consider a political island here. And what I can say is being out and having the opportunity over the last 20 years to be around when student teachers are in so many different classrooms. I think what we have here is a real uniqueness of all staff, principals, the superintendent. We address issues when they happen. And those, I would say, are my blue ones.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask? Ms. Ells.
Thanks for being here today. Thanks for putting yourselves out there and running for school board. I'm interested in knowing what your academic vision is for FUSD. If you were elected, you have 4 years to kind of help achieve that vision. What do you consider your role as board member in doing that, and helping to do that?
Yes.
To be continually looking for answers to questions. To never say we have completed our goals. There will always be issues, and there will be challenges, and there will be rewards. And I think we need to work together to keep current with what we are doing. Not to put things in a box and we'll deal with those later. Deal with things as they come along. But also be creative. And I think the thing we can do the most creatively is look at our staff, what are their needs, look at what the children's needs are, and come up with creative ways to fund things. Not be afraid. Don't be fearful. Create. Go the other way.
To increase expectations, particularly at the junior high level, to increase access to higher level courses, particularly AP courses for all students, to close this widening achievement gap that we are seeing across all schools. The school board members aren't directly involved in doing any of these things. They do it through two means. One is hiring the next superintendent. So hiring a superintendent who can be a visionary and who isn't afraid to innovate and to try new things. And the second means of entry is it's a policy statement. So you put your money where your mouth is. If you identify issues that are important, you make sure that there is a line item so that it can be achieved.
As a parent, I'm really excited to see magnet schools like Kinsey, just the transformation of Kinsey in this past year, in the district trying new things. So as a school board member, I definitely want to remain in this innovative, collaborative space of supporting new ideas and trying to meet the needs of students in different ways. I think, as Ms. Kelty said, hiring a superintendent and hiring somebody geared toward those skills is definitely is going to be probably the most important thing this school board this next year does. And so I think that in moving forward, I'm all about new ideas, I'm all about new innovation, and I really think that we could do a better job of tapping the internal resources we already have.
Thankfully, FUSD has a plethora of teachers and staff who are bright and dedicated, and they have these ideas, and they do come to the board, they do come to their administrators with certain ideas, and then it goes through the system as far as vetting whether or not we can fund it, whether or not it will work, whether or not it will meet the needs of the students, whether or not it will it'll support the majority of students who need these kinds of services or programs or whatever. And I can't even list all the different kinds of magnet programs and all the different academic programs that we have in place that are so important to the development of students. And we've got the teachers to thank for that, because it's their ideas, it's their voices who bring these things to light.
Okay, Mr. Nichols. And then I'll get to your question next. And does anyone else, before Mr. Nichols goes, anyone else want to ask a question? Because we probably are getting to the wrap-up period here. No? Okay, so we'll just go with those two questions then.
My question is, I'm somewhat on the fence with the $15 minimum wage. I mean, personally, I see the need for it, but I also know as a parent the impact of FUSD is great. FUSD can't just raise its revenue to support something like this, and I worry that this may have an impact on what FUSD can do in terms of revenue for all staff, or for possible raises, and how that might impact teacher retention and so forth. So I'm curious, where do you stand on supporting that personally, and also can you support it knowing that it may very well have a detrimental impact on the district?
Ms. Fredericks.
I'm on the fence as well. I have not yet decided on this issue. I do see the value, I do see the need, but again, it comes back to funding. We have a great working relationship with the legislature and our district leaders, and getting them to understand how important funding is. I believe that the proposal says that it's not going to jump up to $15 an hour right away, it's going to be incremental. I would hope that over the next 5, 10, 15 years that the funding is also increased for education in general, and that just becomes part and parcel of the overall effect. So I'm with you. I'm undecided at this point. I haven't done enough research.
Ms. Lawrence.
I think it's a complex issue. As a realtor working in this community, I definitely see the impact to people trying to purchase a home or trying to rent a place to live here. Certainly increasing the wages of people definitely helps to accomplish those goals. And I think that, we've all sat up here and talked today about how affordable housing affects teacher retention and how teachers' wages affects teachers' retention. I too am undecided, but in my indecision, I'm probably leaning a little bit more toward supporting an increase in minimum wage right now. But I do think that has detrimental effects, obviously, to the budget of the school district. I think it's the school board's job, though. It's all of our jobs. If you're a teacher for the district, if you're a parent in the district, it's your job to be out here advocating for increased funding. Absolutely. And I think that pressing on our District 6 legislators helps us to get those needed resources.
I support an increase in the minimum wage. If it's $12 or $15, there are advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage of being the only community to have the $15 is that FUSD won't receive any more funding from the state. They won't say, oh, you have $15 minimum wage, so you'll get more money. So that will stretch the district thin. And then, speaking of teacher retention, if we lose aides and other support to teachers, will that also translate into retention? The benefit of the $15 an hour is that wages increase for personnel, and I believe that people who work with kids should be paid more.
I think it's a very complex question, and I don't think that there's a simple solution. I think it's something that we're going to have to face eventually, because I think we're going to have to look at paraprofessionals. But if you are going to raise paraprofessionals, I would question that some of the teachers here that spend the amount of time that they do to dedicate to the profession are making less than $15 or $12 an hour. So how are you going to justify that an aide, which is certainly an important element of the child's education, receives, let's say, $15 an hour, and yet you have teachers that are sometimes here 10, 12 hours a day working on something. And they're certainly, even with the salaries they have, making $15 an hour.
Thank you. All right, so our final question. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. My name is Jamie Whelan, and I've had the honor to teach both in Flagstaff Unified School District and at NAU. And as I sit here and I listen, I don't hear NAU pedagogy, research-based kind of ideas as we have this huge resource right down the road. Are we using it effectively? Do you have any plans to use NAU and the students and professors there? Just ideas on it.
All right, we'll start with Ms. Gilmore.
I think the whole thing that's difficult about that question is that research takes time. Also, it's very hard to translate it unless we're going to do our research right here in the community. And again, what's the cost issue? Are they willing to pair with us and perhaps the wrong word is a gift, but provide it to us, because we would provide them the sample that they could do their research with, and we would all gain, or is this not another budget item?
Having worked both at NAU and within a school, I agree. I see it as a tremendous resource, and we frequently had students come in. In fact, we had a woman pilot a study to work at social emotional learning that will be very helpful under the new rendition from the federal government. So it's definitely a resource. I was at the United Way luncheon when they announced launch Flagstaff, and Dr. Robert Kelty from Puente de Hoyo was with Dan, can't think of his last name now, Kane, sorry, I meant to say Dan Kane. And they're launching this initiative that will completely reinforce FUSD, because they'll be focusing on aspects that perhaps FUSD is not in their purview, indicators of child well-being, poverty, but that will have a tremendous impact on the students that come to FUSD. So there is definitely collaboration and partnerships. It could be improved. Increased.
I think that, it's an interesting point, Jamie, and I think that it's a cultural problem, right? I mean, it's a problem that runs all the way to our city government, right? We're not utilizing, hopefully you can help us change that. We're not utilizing that resource enough at NAU at a city level. And so I think culturally, it's just something that we have to try to address as a city. And I do think, what I've been talking about us not using our resources is sort of articulated in this example. We certainly have parents of kids in this school district who are NAU professors or work at NAU in some capacity, or CCC for that matter. And maybe we aren't utilizing the cross information of these groups effectively enough to bring that back down and utilize that at the educational level with our kids. And so I think increased communication is really the answer to helping solve this problem.
I will say that the board is currently looking at developing new relationships. We currently have a relationship with FMC. We do have a relationship with NAU, and there are some programs that are going forward for our students. There are other entities as well that we need to reach out, and we are starting to look at those things, and we are starting to broaden our horizons, thankfully, and bring in other partners, be it at the county level, at the city level, at the state level. CCC in particular, we're trying to work more with in regards to getting those dual credit classes going. So there's a need, there's definitely a need for using these resources in our community, and I think that we are reaching out to them.
One more question.
No, it's not a question.
Oh.
I just like to thank the captains for giving us an exercise in civil discourse. I was wondering if it was taped, if we could send it on to Washington, D.C.
It is in fact taped. Yes, I was going to thank our candidates here for taking time out of your Saturday to come here and provide us information about your goals and vision for this district. I want to thank all of the audience members for doing the same. I'd like to have a special shout out to Mr. Shaddy here at Kulpinski High School who videotaped this. And we're going to be posting that to YouTube and trying to get some information out to the community, FEA members, and so forth, so that we can make an intelligent decision about how we're going to vote in this election. So thanks all of you for coming, and I'm assuming you guys will be available for any additional specific questions afterwards if you want to come up and talk. So thanks everyone. You're excused.